It's the 15th Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa BRICS summit in Johannesburg, South Africa. And leaders of the countries will be talking about how to strengthen the bloc for more frontiers and indeed for economic diversity and inclusion. We're joined now by Emeka Orjih, who is a former assistant country director of the United States African Development Foundation. Emeka, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's the 15th BRICS summit in Johannesburg, and about 40 other countries have signified interest to join. And then of particular interest is Russia. With what Russia is having with other countries of the world at the moment, I think it looks like it's eager to show the rest of the world that it still has friends. Mm-hmm. So what's in it for Russia?
Okay, let's situate BRICS first. Mm-hmm. BRICS is an alternative bloc that intends to rival the G7, right, to some extent.
But they've denied that, though.
Yes, they will deny it, but it's by their operations and their policies and what they're putting out. They intend to be a rival bloc, economic bloc, now a geopolitical bloc, or tending towards a geopolitical bloc. They have set up a development bank which intends to provide funds and services to emerging markets and developing economies. So it's a very interesting place to be, more so given that Russia is kind of getting isolated. China is trying to make inroads into spaces like Africa, into the emerging markets. And you have Brazil and you have South Africa, which is sitting with us in Africa. So it's for Brazil, for Russia, I think it's an opportunity. An opportunity to come together with two other major economies, China and India, and attempt to take on the economies, the upcoming economies of the world. Remember, like you mentioned before, they are a quarter of the world's GDP, $56 trillion. They are 40% of the population, right? They have about 30% of the world's land mass. $14 trillion, I think, in foreign reserves. That's huge. That's massive. And a lot can be done with that. Pulling together the resources of those 5 nations to attempt to create a bloc that can create alternatives to the G7 is a very good way to go.
Yes, and President Lula of Brazil has said, look, we just want to organize ourselves. We're not trying to rival G7, G20, the United States, and you disagree with that. However, talking about beyond the issue of expansion of BRICS taking center stage, what are some of the other notable topics of this summit? Most importantly, boosting the use of member states' local currencies and how this ties into the broader discussions of the BRICS summit.
Well, the dollar has been the world's reserve currency for some time now. And there have been a lot of challenges over the years. The dollar's hegemony. There's been a lot of challenges in it. None has been very successful. This is another potential challenge that is coming. The new development bank, as the BRICS Development Bank is called, it's in the process of awarding its first loan in a local currency. I'm not sure which local currency, but I think it's the rupees. If that happens, it could start a journey out of the hegemony that the American dollar has held on world finance and world trade. And that would be good for nations like Nigeria. Why do I say it would be good for nations like Nigeria? Suddenly we are hedged against foreign exchange fluctuations, but we also then have options. We generally have a non-aligned approach to economic issues particularly. So having options, access to development finance that is denominated in currencies that we can be hedged against the dollar fluctuations from, it's a very good thing for developing nations. It's an excellent thing for Nigeria, particularly.
Okay, that's interesting. But then, if you look at BRICS and the history of the bloc over the years, you see that they also need to get their act right. Cohesion. They're not. What do you see as the future of BRICS with the cohesion they still need to work on?
Well, there's the main problem there, I foresee, would be between China and India.
Yes.
These are two regional powers. These are two very strong emerging economic powers. They have about the same population. They are rivals, so to speak. So China wants to take this expansionist route, for instance. India is pressing the brakes on that. How is the rivalry between the two of them going to work out? That's the question that needs to be answered. Once that question is answered, then the BRICS can move forward. If that question is not answered, we're going to have a lot of deliberations and, slow movements, and that may not be good for the plans of the bloc. But the Development Bank, under the leadership of the former president of Brazil, seems to be moving on its own course and its own steam. It seems to have gone ahead irrespective of the political differences within the bloc, within the nations in the bloc. It seems to be going ahead with its plans to support these emerging economies and provide alternative sources of finance for economic growth in emerging markets. So I think that is a very good thing.
Maybe I should quickly butt in just before Nkechi comes in again. While we have this struggle, this cohesion struggle and power tussle, quote unquote, on the one side, on the other side is still the interest of the bloc, and indeed the strongest, perhaps Russia, in Niger. What could be going on when you look at the influence that Russia want to wield using the bloc against the West for Niger?
That's an interesting question you ask. What's happening in Niger is not very clear. There are different schools of thought. There's a school of thought that says it's a resource gamble or a resource fight. There's a school of thought that says it's a geopolitical play. There's a school of thought that says it's a Russian move on Africa. Now, which it is, we are not certain. But there are certain things that we're certain of. Russia seems to be in support of the move. The West seems not to be in support of the move. Russia would use every resource in its power to try to ensure that its interests are protected and advanced. If that includes attempting to use the BRIC bloc, I suppose that Russia would not balk at that. But you would then ask the question, you may have a China that is a bit supportive. Again, it comes back to what will India do? What would Brazil do? Where do they stand? But in spite of all that, Niger would fall into the category of countries that the BRICS coalition is designed to assist and to help, especially financially. Niger is one of the poorest countries in the world. I think that by the UN's HDI, Human Development Index, I think Niger is the poorest country in the world. It requires a lot of help, a lot of assistance from partners. And if that help will come from the BRICS bloc, I am certain that Niger would very happily take it, and I am certain that if the BRICS bloc give that help in hand, I am certain that they would want to have a little say. They would have to have some more. They would want to have some more say in how events unfold in Niger and how they are economy, what turn their economy takes.
Now that we've moved on to Niger, the African Union, as we know, has suspended Niger after this coup that happened a month ago, and they've elaborated on some of their concerns about the implications of coups in West Africa. What are your thoughts on the AU's stance, and also ECOWAS? How ECOWAS has been handling this situation, like we were just listening to General Abdulsalami talking about the ding-dong. What are your thoughts?
I have a few things. That bother me. One is we have two powerful blocs in Africa. We have our regional bloc, which is ECOWAS. We have our continental bloc, which is AU. I am not certain that they are operating in a clear alignment. There seems to be gaps in communication, or perceived gaps in communication. There also seems to be issues around who speaks first. For instance, when they gave the ultimatums, ECOWAS spoke first, and AU was dilly-dallied a
really
bit.
back that up.
Yeah,
yes.
should it support, shouldn't it support, and after some time it supported. I think that there should be greater coordination between the two blocs so that the government in Niger is getting a clear and a definite
Direction.
ultimatum or communication coming from Africa. I think that the AU's warning, let's call it a warning, AU's warning that all foreigners, by foreigners, non-Africans and non-African nations, should keep out of this. I think that it's welcome, and I think that it has come at the right time. There was an allegation from Algeria that France had asked to use its airspace for air flights into Niger, and there was a denial from France. So basically, there are things happening that we are not very sure of, but what we are sure of is that the reactions of our regional bloc and our continental bloc should align so that they have one strong voice in negotiating with Niger. What that negotiation will turn out, we don't know. Niger has said that they would try to get back to civilian rule in 3 years. ECOWAS has rejected it. Where is that going to end up? I suspect that at the end of the day, they will keep negotiating. Like General Abdulsalam said, there will be a ding-dong. I love the word he used, ding-dong. They will do their ding-dong for some time. Yeah. Yes, and they will come to somewhere in a middle ground. What I wouldn't want to see is a war.
I don't think anyone would want to see that. So we can see what's going on in Ukraine
yes.
with Russia.
A war does not benefit anyone. A war does not benefit Nigeria. It does not benefit the bloc, the West African bloc. It does not benefit Africa. Refugees, economic issues. There is a lot that we don't. There's a lot of reasons why we shouldn't have a war.
Emeka, hopefully after the summit, the BRICS summit in Johannesburg, perhaps we'll have you again to review the outcome of that event.
Yes, definitely.
But at this point, we must say a big thank you to you, Emeka Orjih.
Thank you for having me.
You are the former Assistant Country Director, United States African Development Foundation. Thank you very much indeed.